Western honeybee. Western honeybee is not just an insect. It is a living empire with wings. Known scientifically as Apis mellifera, this is the most widespread honeybee species on Earth. Originally from Europe, Africa, and parts of Asia, humans carried it across the world. Today it powers modern beekeeping on nearly every continent. But one bee alone is not the miracle. The colony is. A single hive can contain tens of thousands of bees working together, like one giant living organism. At the center is the queen. During peak season, she can lay around 1,500 eggs every day, controlling the future of the colony. Around her are the workers, all female. They build the hive, collect nectar, create honey, feed the young, and defend their home. The drones have one main purpose: finding and mating with queens. But the most incredible part is how they communicate. Western honeybees use the famous waggle dance, a movement that tells other bees where food is, the direction, the distance, even the quality. A tiny insect using a natural GPS system. Their impact reaches far beyond honey. They pollinate fruits, nuts, vegetables, and plants humans depend on every day. And when danger arrives, workers defend the colony with everything they have. A sting against a mammal often means sacrificing their own life. Even winter cannot stop them. The colony gathers together, vibrating their muscles to create heat and protect the queen. But today, this ancient partnership faces threats. Parasites like varroa mites, disease, pesticides, and habitat loss. For thousands of years, humans have depended on this tiny creature. Because the Western honeybee is not just making honey, it is helping keep the world growing. Africanized honeybee. Africanized honeybee is the bee that escaped a laboratory and changed an entire continent. Most people know it by a more dramatic name, the killer bee. But that nickname does not tell the full story. In the 1950s, Brazilian geneticist Warwick Kerr crossed African bees with European honeybees. The goal was not to create something dangerous. It was to create a bee that could produce better in tropical climates. Then everything changed. In 1957, 26 swarms accidentally escaped from a research facility near Sao Paulo. And they started spreading fast. Over the following decades, Africanized honeybees moved across the Americas in one of the most remarkable biological expansions ever recorded. By the early 1990s, they reached Texas. Today, they exist across parts of the southern United States, including areas like Arizona, Nevada, and Florida. But what makes them famous is their defense. Africanized honeybees react faster than many other honeybees when their colony is threatened. And they respond together, in huge numbers. But here is the part most people forget. They are not just a threat. They are also extremely productive pollinators. Across the Americas, they help support plants, crops, and agriculture. The Africanized honeybee is not simply a villain from a headline. It is a reminder that nature is rarely that simple. A tiny insect created by humans, feared for its defense, but valued for what it helps keep alive. Mason bee. Mason bee is the tiny insect that works like a pollination machine. Small, quiet, and easy to miss. With a metallic blue-black body that shines under the right light, many people might mistake it for a simple fly. But this little bee is one of nature's most impressive workers. Unlike honeybees, mason bees do not live in giant colonies. No huge hive, no queen controlling thousands of workers. They live a much quieter life, and they are surprisingly gentle. Female mason bees can sting, but they rarely do unless seriously disturbed. But their real superpower is pollination. A single mason bee can pollinate with incredible efficiency, often compared to the work of many honeybees. Small size, massive impact. These tiny insects help support important crops like apples, cherries, almonds, and pears. The fruit you see every day may have a mason bee somewhere in its story. And helping them is surprisingly simple. They can use small nesting spaces like wooden boxes with hollow tubes placed in a safe, sunny area. No honey collection, no complicated hive, just a small bee doing an enormous job. The mason bee proves that nature's most important workers are not always the loudest or the largest. Sometimes the smallest creatures carry the biggest responsibility. Bumblebee. Bumblebee is the tiny flying machine that unlocks food with vibration. Large, round, covered in fuzzy hair, and carrying a deep, buzzing sound like a miniature helicopter moving through the garden. But its most amazing ability is not how it looks. It is what it can do. Bumblebees use a technique called buzz pollination. They land on a flower, grab tightly with their legs, and vibrate their entire body at incredible speed. Some vibrations can reach around 400 hertz. This movement shakes pollen loose from flowers that cannot easily release it another way, almost like a biological machine built by nature. And this ability matters more than most people realize. Many familiar plants benefit from this special skill. Tomatoes, bell peppers, eggplants, and blueberries. The food sitting on your table may have a tiny connection to a bumblebee somewhere, a creature most people barely notice, but one that helps keep entire food systems moving. The bumblebee proves that nature's most important workers are not always the biggest. Sometimes they arrive as a small, fuzzy insect, carrying the power to shake life out of a flower. Carpenter Bee. Carpenter Bee is the insect that became nature's tiny woodworker. No machines, no tools, just a pair of powerful jaws and perfect instinct. Unlike honeybees that build crowded hives, the carpenter bee creates her own hidden home. She finds old wood, a dead tree, a fence post, or even weathered wooden structures. Then she starts carving. Using only her jaws, she creates a nearly perfect round entrance about half an inch wide. But the impressive part happens inside. After entering the wood, she turns almost 90 degrees and tunnels along the grain, creating a hidden passage few people ever see. Inside, she builds separate chambers, each one divided with walls made from packed sawdust. Then every room gets its own supply, a mixture of pollen and nectar, a single egg, and a sealed space where the next generation can grow. No giant colony, no queen giving orders, no thousands of workers helping. Just one bee building an entire nursery by herself. And despite their intimidating size and loud buzzing, carpenter bees are usually not aggressive unless their nest is disturbed. So if you ever find a perfectly round hole carved into old wood, you may not be looking at damage. You may be looking at the work of one of nature's smallest architects, Orchid Bee. Orchid Bee is the insect that creates its own perfume, not by accident, but as part of one of nature's most unusual partnerships. For millions of years, orchid bees and orchids have evolved together. Two completely different forms of life connected by scent. Unlike many bees, male orchid bees are not only searching for nectar, they are searching for fragrance. They travel from flower to flower collecting aromatic compounds, tiny pieces of scent gathered from the natural world. Then they store and mix them in special structures on their back legs, almost like a tiny perfumer creating a personal formula. Every male builds his own unique scent, a natural signature designed to attract females. But while creating this invisible masterpiece, something else happens. The bee carries orchid pollen from one flower to another, helping the plants reproduce. Some orchids are so specialized that they depend heavily on these bees to continue their life cycle. If the bee disappears, those flowers may lose their perfect partner, and their appearance is just as incredible as their story. Metallic green, deep blue, bright gold. When an orchid bee moves through the forest, it barely looks like an insect. It looks like a living jewel with wings, a reminder that evolution does not only create survivors. Sometimes it creates beauty.